And because of the way the society is, you don't feel safe coming forward. You don't feel like anyone would understand you. You don't feel like anyone would believe you. Because how can a little girl do those things to a man? This is a little different for me. I don't think I've ever really done something quite like this, so let's see where it goes. Start off with, I'm Ozzy, and this is kind of my story. I've gone over some of this before here and there between my podcasts and my other channels and stuff like that, but this is the first time I've really sat down like this to really talk about it. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm doing this right now, but it seemed like something that would be therapeutic, I guess. Something that would be maybe helpful to others. Something that, might help someone somewhere at some point. Or in the very least to get this off of my chest and maybe make myself feel a little better. Don't know if this will ever see the light of day or if I'll keep this to myself or what, but this is just kind of who I am, my background, some of what I've gone through, obviously not everything, but some of who I am, so buckle in. So again, I'm Ozzy. No, that's not my real name, but that's all we need for right now. That's for sure. And I was born in 1977. My mother was never supposed to have kids, she was told. From the doctors, endometriosis and stuff. She came from a large family herself. She was one of 20. In fact, the 13th, which is something that is important, and you'll hear as we go through the story a little bit more. But she was the 13th of the 20 children, and then was told upon her diagnosis, based on the things she had wrong with her, that she was never going to have kids. And so she met my father, and they proceeded to get married. And then in 1975 and 1977, the end of 1977, so December of 77, she gave birth to me. In fact, December 13th. That's why 13 is such a big number for me, because not only is my mom number 13, but I was born on the 13th. I always had a lot of family and everything around when I was younger. I was born with amblyopia, astigmatism, and a few other wandering eye, they call it. Basically, normally both eyes are controlled, with your optic nerves and everything, and you're able to. But the musculature in one of my eyes, at first, I believe was wandering out too far. So at, I think it was 14 months, I was brought in for my first eye surgery, and I went into the hospital. And was, I guess, prior to surgery, before I had all my anesthetics and everything given to me, was at 14 months old telling the doctor jokes. So, yes, I have always been a loudmouth and tend to run my mouth. And even at a very young age, I was able to articulate properly, so I've always been a very good orator. I know sometimes on my podcast, I do not seem so. I do not always speak with the most eloquent and insightful prose, but I can be when I choose to. Obviously, Stoner Ozzy is a little bit more of a character than normal day-to-day Ozzy. Not that I've not always been kind of a character, but yeah, I guess it's just a little. If normal me is a 7, then Stoner Ozzy's like a 8.5. You know, it's me just turned up a little bit more, I guess, is the way to put it. So yeah, at 14 months old, I went in for my first eye surgery to pull my eye in. And by a year old, I had glasses for part-time, very thick glasses. The ones I have now are still pretty thick, but nowhere near to what they were back then. They tried patching my good eye to... They thought back then that the thing was the lazy eye just needed to be woken up, basically. The issue was that the eye needed proper training. So the answer to that was to patch the good eye, the eye that was able to see, and force the bad eye to do the work, and therefore that would strengthen it. Here we are, you know. Obviously that didn't work. So after the first surgery at 14 months, I believe it was about 4 years old, I went in for my second surgery where by then I was starting to have problems with a lot of illnesses, getting sick a lot and stuff, which was, we found out later, due to asthma, but at that time it wasn't really known, so they were planning on taking out my adenoids, and also this time, because after the fixing of the eye, it had started to move too far in. So they were going in to correct that once again and bring it out to the normal deviation. So I don't know if you guys have noticed this. Either A, right now, with me talking to the camera here, or on any of my other channels or shows or anything, that when I look, instead of most people will look like this, with their nose as the center point, I turn this way. My blind eye is my right eye, and over the years, to compensate, I learned not to really use it, so my center of vision is centered on my left eye. So I tend to look at people a little bit what someone would consider sidelong. So if someone's sitting here and someone's sitting here, the person sitting there is going to think I'm looking at them while I'm really looking here. It's caused some issues sometimes when people don't know me well, but after you get to know me, you get to see how it works. So yeah, at that young age, I had that second surgery, and by then, we were living still in Pittsfield. We had moved from one house to another, and I think we're just moving to the the third house that I lived in up in Pittsfield before we moved down here. And it was then that I was able to get my first dog. My mom is not really a dog person. She had some trauma growing up as a kid, and because of that, she's not as into dogs and other animals as some other people are, and as I myself am. So when and my dad is too. So when I was younger and I wanted an animal, she acquiesced, and we got my first puppy, and I started having a lot of problems. I seemed to be getting sick a lot. I seemed to be having a lot of issues with different illnesses and stuff like that. Oh, I see what that is. Sorry, I get distracted sometimes. You'll hear more why about that later on as well. So I was having a lot of problems. I was sick all the time. I was allergic to chocolate. I was allergic to pretty much so many things. And I got my dog, and then I started having other problems, and we thought I was allergic to the dog. So after having my puppy for a very short time, He was a cute little black lab puppy. We were forced to give him up. And I don't know, probably, geez, it couldn't have been too much longer. Anyways, I got diagnosed with asthma sometime after that, and I was on quite a bit of things. They pretty much put me on so many different things. When I was little, when I was growing up, I was very, very skinny until they put me on some steroids for my lungs and everything because I was having a lot of problems. Pretty much if a asthma drug came out or was being tested from somewhere around 1986 to probably around 1996, I tried it. I was there. I was put in a lot of trials and stuff. I was, I don't know how many times they were like, oh, there's a new medicine we're going to try. And, this one's just getting ready to go to the market. We need to see, and we need people like you to test it out. And I went through that a lot growing up. And trying different things so I could be healthy and be able to do things. Now, because of the eyes and stuff, it made it so I had some limitations, some things that I couldn't do. I've always had a slight disability because of that, and it's never really been to the point that it really adversely affected me or really caused any major problems other than like penmanship issues and stuff like that, and problems with driving and riding and kind of general things that you would have as someone who had some sight issues. But other than that, it definitely was never anything that got to the point that I thought that I was going to be unable to be a productive member of society or anything, or unable to hold down a job. I was told quite a bit growing up that I would never get my license, that my eyesight was too far gone to ever consider getting my license, that because of some regulations and stuff that maybe I could squeak by, but I never should get my license. My parents, believe it or not, were actually encouraged to have me play some video games and stuff. They said that they were told that the hand-eye coordination could be helpful for me because of having a detached retina in one eye. There was always the concern that if anything happened to my good eye, that then I would be completely impaired and unable to cope as a quote-unquote normal person, a regularly abled person, I guess I would say, as opposed to someone who has a visual disability. I was always able to, well, other than the glasses, pretty much fake it till you make it. But there was always the fear that if anything major happened to my other eye, my good eye, that it would cause me to have such problems that I wouldn't be able to have a again, quote unquote, normal daily life. But what is normal? Because, just, I guess the thing is not be having the issues that a non-sighted person has, someone who has lost their eyesight. I don't mean to be ableist in any of this if I'm coming across that way. This is something, again, this is no script. This is straight from the heart. So anyways, we lived in a pretty nice area, a pretty nice apartment, I should say. We had a pretty decent amount of space and had a lot of family around because of what was going on. Having all those, my mom being one of 20, there was so much family. And I spent a lot of time with my mom's family, when we lived up in Pittsfield, we would have birthday parties and holidays and stuff, and just regular get-togethers all the time. Even after moving down here to Southwick, we would regularly, pretty much like every week, take a trip up to Pittsfield to see our family. So family has always been very important to me and always been a big part of my life. And I've always been that type that goes out of their way and tries to take care of everybody and is kind of that caregiver person and tries to give of themselves and not always expect much in return, but then, or at least try not to expect much in return. Over the years, that has changed, but again, we'll get to that as we go. So anyways, there we were. We lived in Pittsfield. We had a lot going on. We were always on the move, doing stuff with family, going places, going with my grandma, my grandpa before he passed. Pretty, I guess, normal childhood, other than the fact that, a regular Sunday dinner for us was, a family Sunday dinner at grandma's house was probably around 40 to 60 people on the regular, and then holidays were at least 100 people. Whenever we went to somebody's house, we'd at least be seeing 100 people. I mean, it was just so much family around all the time. When we had parties during the summer, it was amazing the amount of people that showed up. Our cookouts would just be huge. And it was a lot of fun, I grew up spending a lot of time learning from, aunts and grandma and mom, the cooking and stuff, because of the eyes and stuff, they didn't really want me out roughhousing when there was other kids around who were my age, because they were always afraid something was going to happen to my eyes. So it was kind of, hang out, chill, be with grandma, grandpa, be with all the older people. But then all the guys would go and tell dirty jokes and stuff and stories and all that shit. And they didn't want kids around, so I was shuffled off into the kitchen with the ladies and got to listen to all the stories and hear. I mean, I learned about women from a young age, all the day-to-day things of what women go through and stuff like that, because I heard it. I heard everything about periods and different times of the year and different things and, childbirth and different ailments and stuff. I was there. I heard it. I was in the trenches, as it were, as they were all cooking and preparing for the dinners and stuff. Because back then, it was delineated by what gender you were. The guys went and did one thing, the ladies went and did something else. That's why I've always been kind of a little bit more progressive with that, with gender roles and stuff, because I don't believe there's any such thing as gender roles. When something needs to be done in the house, it needs to be done. Sorry. Something in my teeth. It doesn't matter if it's a quote-unquote man's job or a quote-unquote woman's job, because there isn't that. Something that needs to be done in the house needs to be done. It's genderless. I mean, unless it's inserting a tampon into a vagina, it is a genderless thing. Unless it is shaving balls, it is a genderless thing. I mean, honestly, and even then, there's exceptions to that as well. But things that need to be done around the house need to be done around the house, because if you don't do them, nobody's going to come and save you. If you don't do your laundry, nobody's going to come and do it for you. When you get to be an adult, and if you were out living on your own, it wouldn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter if you're male and doing laundry is not a male job. Because if you're a man and you're living on your own, either you do your own laundry or you buy new clothes all the time. if you're a woman and your car breaks down, either you learn how to fix it yourself or you go to a mechanic and have them do it. If your plumbing or something breaks, or your electrical, your lamp breaks, either you learn how to fix it yourself. And that's the same for men too, for everything. Anything that happens around the house, it's not a gender thing. And I learned that from a young age because I was shown that that's not how it was. I was in a family where that's not how it was. And then when I went home to my house, I would see my father doing the things that were considered womanly. Because my mom said, shit needs to get done, and I need your help. Please help me. And he would. So I was taught from a young age, it doesn't matter. You need to help. And, I was sick all the time. I was having a lot of problems with the asthma. I was on so many different meds and stuff. So I had a lot of issues growing up. So I didn't get to always do a lot of the sports type stuff, do a lot of the other things like that. So I was relegated to more the inside stuff. I played video games a lot. I watched TV a lot. Because of the eyes, things that were bright and colorful, stuff that drew the attention was always good for me because it helped me feel a part of it. Everything that was dull and it was hard to see when I was really young, especially when they were doing the patching of the eye. It was really hard to see some things because this eye has very little, the right eye has very little proper sight in it. I have 2200 without correction and about 2100 with correction, so not terrific, but I can see per se. So I needed stuff that was bright, colorful, stuff that would draw me in. And then, like I said, I had the asthma and stuff like that. And then in 1985, my father got a job not down here in Southwick, but down in Connecticut at a paper mill, working at a paper mill. And he moved down here I think it was about 6 months before we moved down. Because he was down here getting a place for us to stay and stuff. He was staying with his sister. His sister was living down here in Southwick, and his sister and his brother was living with her, and then his other brother was out somewhere else, and his other sister was living down in Connecticut. Over in Agawam at the time, I think. So we always had family around, wherever we lived. So when we moved down here, we had Dad's family. And so he moved down here. Then about 6 months later, me and Mom moved down here with him. We moved into an apartment over on the other side of the lake. And pretty much 9 months later, Curdy was born. I didn't really growing up over there. Yeah, I had a few things I did karate, taekwondo. And actually my grandmaster was the grandmaster who taught Chuck Norris taekwondo. So I was taught by the same grandmaster as Chuck Norris. And I went to that, and then I got to my yellow belt and started having problems with my knees. And by 18, I had my first knee surgery. That was, the first major knee surgery. But, there was a lot that happened in between there. So I started doing taekwondo. I enjoyed it. I was working from, at 8 years old, my parents had my sister. We were living down here. My mom was working. My dad was working. And, my mom wasn't working yet. My dad was working, though. And money was usually a little tight. And sometimes I wanted stuff. And I learned really quick about this thing called Olympia Sales, which allowed you to sell greeting cards and wrapping paper and all kind of stuff like that. So I went and I started getting their catalog, and I started going literally in the apartment complex we lived in, I literally started going door to door. I would get home from school some days and go right out and pound pavement for a few hours. And then on the weekends, when the weather was nice enough and when we weren't going somewhere or doing something, I was out knocking on doors, selling stuff in the complex. If we were going to family functions, I was bringing it with me. I had my dad bringing it to work. When my mom got a job, I had her bringing it to work. I was making sales and getting prizes, and then they started offering money, and I started doing that and getting the money. We moved from the apartments over to here. I kept doing it, and then at about 12 years old, I got the opportunity to work at the motocross track in town. I wasn't old enough to do flagging or anything at that point, but they wanted me to do cleanup, and I started cleaning the track. And as I was doing the job, I started noticing there's a bunch of beer cans and soda cans and bottles and shit like that I was throwing away. So I asked the boss, I'm like, hey, do you want me to put this stuff in recycling? He's like, no. I'm like, well, do you mind if I separate it and keep the cans and bottles? He's like, yeah, sure, why not? Because side hustle, man. I learned from a young age. The only way to... The only person that's going to... I'm going to be honest with you guys. There's only one person out there that's actually out there for you. And that's you. Everybody else has to take care of themselves. They might tell you they're out for you, and there's some of us out there who actually are out there for other people regularly, but at the same time, they can only be so much out there for you. The only person who can ever be 100% out there for you is you, because you're the only one who's ever going to be in this for you. So sometimes you have to understand that as much as somebody wants to be there for you and as much as they want to give you of themselves, they can only give so much of themselves. They only have so much of themselves they can give because they have to reserve some for others. They have to reserve some for themselves. They have to take care of themselves. So the only person who's ever actually out there for you is going to be you. So I learned from a young age, if I wanted something, I had to get it myself. So I started finding ways to side hustle. And that was one way I could side hustle. Hey, you're giving me X job. I'm seeing that there's this returnables that are worth 5 cents a piece, and you're telling me you just chuck them. Can I keep them? Well, that happened for a while, a couple of years. I think it was about 2 years, maybe. Yeah, it was about until I started high school that I did that job. And then just before they told me that they didn't need me to do it anymore, funnily enough, one of the guys who owned who was like the head of the track at the time, saw me down at the local place returning all the bottles that I had picked up after a weekend. And here's the thing. They were paying me $20 a day to come in and clean. I was clearing, on a regular day, I was clearing an extra $100 to $200 on top of that. On a day that was nationals or something like that, I could bring home $1,000 in a weekend in cans and bottles. They stopped getting my help after that. They didn't want me doing it. At least not the cans and bottles. They wanted everything separated, and they wanted to take the cans and bottles because they found how much they were really losing. Understandable. Okay. So from there, we had moved here by then. So it was getting toward the time where I was getting ready to go to high school and stuff like that. And high school is a whole different thing. And when I started in high school, by then I had already gotten into comic books. We had moved here. I met the next door neighbor. We started getting into comics over that summer. I started getting into comics, X-Men specifically. That was my group. And we started going to the local comic book stores. We would walk, we would ride bikes, whatever it took to get there. And I really enjoyed collecting and getting that kind of stuff and just being able to go through and read these stories. And all during this time, I've always wanted to be a writer. So I've always kind of taken some inspiration from what I've read and been like, how could I use some of this ideas that are here without, like, obviously without plagiarizing, but just taking an inspiration from something that's here to maybe spark an idea that I can then bring to life somehow. And the fanciful nature of comic books, the ability to have these heroes and villains who are superhuman, obviously, who are beyond humanity, who are better, stronger, bigger, all these things always lends itself. It's the whole Gods Among Us thing, which is a boost to the ego, obviously, for us, because it's that thought that any man, especially when you start talking about characters that are not like Superman or something like that, when you start talking about someone who's just born with disability and they're born normal and then they go through changes, and obviously this was happening to me at that time as well, because this was a time of puberty. So for me, the X-Men just really resonated at that point. It was this group of outcasts, because I felt pretty outcast. Even though I hung out with everybody, I always felt outside, on the edges. Never really fitting fully in with any group, but able to go in and be a part of any group at any time. Be able to go in and have meaningful and thoughtful conversations with the Brainiac kids. Be able to go and hang out with the stoners and talk stoner comedy movies and just general movie bullshit and things like that. Be able to go with the preppies and hang out with them and talk about the latest thing that was going on, the latest fads, the latest this, that, and the other. The jocks, to be able to hang out with them, usually because, they were just usually cool people to hang out with. Once you got to know them. Some of them I helped with their homework. I never did their homework for them. I was not that guy. I would basically, for free, I would sit during my breaks and help tutor them with whatever they were working, because I didn't give a shit about my stuff. I was in special needs classes because of my eyesight, so they forced me into special needs classes, and I felt the work was banal. I felt it was beneath me because I could get the work done in 5 or 10 minutes. So I would get it done, and then they'd tell me that I was not doing it right or whatever because I was done well before everyone else. And I was like just bored. So I started finding other ways to amuse myself. And one of those was helping other people advance their grades while mine languished because I just didn't care. I felt like they didn't care about me, so why should I care about me? The school didn't care about me, obviously. If they cared about me, they'd be trying to get me out of this. If they cared, they would see that my work is beyond and I shouldn't be in these classes. My parents were fighting for me to get me out of them, but the school was like, no, he needs them. And they would browbeat them and gaslight them into believing it. And eventually, I did get out of it. Like I said, during all this time, I was having a lot of problems. My back always hurt. My legs always hurt. When my mother was pregnant for my sister, for Kirsten, we were going down stairs, bringing down laundry. I was helping her out. I was 8 years old at the time. I was 7 and a half, something like that. Just turning 8. I don't know. I was walking down the stairs. She was pregnant. I was carrying the laundry, and I fell down the stairs. And it wasn't like your typical rounded stairs. This was just like a piece of board, so it had a kind of almost not knife edge, but that sharper edge. And I took that to my back and didn't find out till many, many years later that actually when I did fall, I broke off some pieces of bone, and I have floating pieces of bone in my back, which causes a lot of my back issues, which I didn't know about prior to that. I was having a lot of knee problems, and I had knee surgery at 18. I had my first knee surgery at 17 to 18. I had arthroscopic surgery. I just turned 18. So I spent the remainder of my senior year of high school on a cane and earned the nickname Snoop Dogg for a while. During the whole time when I was working, or when I was in high school, I worked at the comic book store on Fridays and Saturdays, occasionally on Sundays when he needed me. And during the summers, I worked as a camp counselor at a summer day camp in town as well. I was taking care of kids between kindergarten and 8th grade. Mind you, I'm in 9th grade my first year there, so I'm taking care of kids that are literally one grade younger than me. And then the following years, sophomore, junior, and senior year were, a little bit different. But I was able to learn a lot in that. I worked at the comic book store, and I spent a lot of time learning that business. It was something I was passionate about, and I ended up taking his business from being in the red and turning it so it became in the black. He had been running in the red for years, and I saw his problem with ordering and everything. I fixed it, and I got his business up and running, and then I ended up, after I turned 18 and I was graduating high school, I was told I had to get a real job if I wasn't going to be going to college, and I couldn't get funding and everything for college, so I opted instead to go the other route, which was getting out into the workforce. So I went to the local Big Y, which is just like your typical kind of like, think Kroger's, Shaw's, Stop and Shop, Piggly Wiggly, whatever your local grocery store is. It's pretty much what Big Y is. It's kind of a local grocery store for about Massachusetts and about, I think, 2 other states that kind of are around here have it. I think Vermont has 1 or 2, and I think Connecticut has some, but I think that's it. So it's pretty local. And I worked there for a very short time. I worked in frozen food, and then from there I went to working at Blockbuster Video. And that was where I really kind of started showing really what I could do, because I started working there fresh out of high school, pretty much. I worked for a few months at at Big Y, and then went to Blockbuster immediately after. And I stayed there for a few years. I was about 97, I think early 97 until late 99. I was there. I was the youngest manager. I was told I was the youngest manager in Blockbuster history because I got it when I didn't actually start until I was 21, but I got manager when I was 20. I started working there, and when my boss got married, the store manager, I took on so many hours. I was doing like 100-hour weeks. I was very knowledgeable about the movies. I was always there to take on the time. I always did my work. I always did extra jobs when needed. So when a management job came up, they were pretty much ready to throw it at me, and I was willing to take it. So I took the job, and I worked very hard for them and worked a long time until my grandmother had her stroke. Now, this was my last living grandparent. I had never met my father's father. I had never met my father's mother. So I had only met my grandfather on my mom's side, who died when I was fairly young, around 5 or 6 years old. And then my grandmother, who now had a stroke. This is 99, so some years ago now. Wow, quarter of a century ago now. Shit. So I asked for medical leave to go and help take care of her. And shit happened. I wasn't able to get it. I don't begrudge them. I understand it. It's a business perspective, but I said, listen, this is family, and family has to come first. So I'm sorry if you can't do this, then I need to tender my resignation. I enjoyed working here. I enjoyed all of you, and I'll be back as a customer, but my family needs me. So I ended up taking time. Now, mind you, this is because most of her kids were grown up. A lot of them have gotten sick, and some had passed. Some had jobs and families of their own and weren't able to go and do this. I had no one other than myself, really. My mom and sister and father were here, could do things. I had nothing other than my job. And I had no girlfriend at the time. I had nothing. So I was like, you know what? I'll go and I'll take care of it. So I left and I went to help her. I stayed up there for a few months and helped her while she was in the hospital, when she came home and stuff like that. And my uncles and stuff that were living with her, I was cooking and taking care of the house and stuff, helping everybody. Then, after she got home and was getting a little better, I came back here, moved. I was already living here, actually. I was just up there staying for a little while. I came back here and just kind of, my aunt had opened a packaging company where she was just packaging paper and stuff. And her husband had died not too long before. And there were some other people that had been working for her, and a lot of people had left. She is in a new place, and she needed more people. And so she offered me a job, and I started working for her. Again, pretty much, I became production manager fairly quick with helping her out and doing that stuff. She always made sure that all of us got positions that were good titles and good positions within the company, to make sure that we felt like we were growing as part of the company as well, instead of just feeling like we were working for her. We felt like we were all working in concert together to grow the company bigger for all of our benefit, which is one thing I have to say I love about my Aunt Sandy. She taught me a lot of things, and it's one of the things she taught me was, as a business person, you need to make sure that everyone you're working with feels like you're growing together, because that's the only way that a business is successful, is if everyone is growing with the same goals in mind of all growing together. If everyone's off just in it for themselves, then this path could go this way and this path. If everybody's working toward a unified goal, you're more apt to achieve it than everybody splitting off in different directions and trying to achieve the same thing. It's never going to happen. And she understood that, and that's one thing I learned from working under her and watching her leadership things after being a manager myself and stuff, and knowing my leadership style. I was able to cherry pick some things that I learned from her to adopt to my own. And then kind of I don't know, good things and bad things came out of this, but a lot of it was bad. And this is where the story takes a little bit darker of turns, and we get to more of the, I guess, trauma dumping and stuff like that. So I'm going to go into more like relationship stuff now. So back when I was younger, in high school, I was dating a girl, and I don't know, it's so tough to get into. There were expectations on one side, and there were expectations put on to me, some by myself and some from my partner, that I abided by and they did not. And that type of thing saw them seeing people outside of the relationship whilst not allowing me to. Which culminated in this person showing up to my high school graduation party pregnant that I did not know about. So that was my first real meaningful relationship after being with a person for almost 4 years. I was very hurt. Then the next relationship I got into after that, I had turned 18, just turned 18, and was dating a girl. She had just turned 16. Well, or no, she had just turned 17. Sorry, she had just turned 17. Well, there is, hey, it's a little close. So her aunt one day said to me, hey, now, mind you, nothing had happened between us. We were dating, but obviously, we were taking things slow. We had gone to Six Flags. Well, back then it was still Riverside. We had gone to Riverside together. And other than that, like, made out a few times in church youth group and stuff like that. But, like, nothing huge. And, her aunt kind of threatened me and told me that because I was 18 and she was younger, that this could be statutory if we did anything, and she could call the cops on me and I could get a record and blah, blah. I'm 18 years old, so I'm like, oh my God, yeah, no. Okay, yeah, so I broke it off with her, and that was kind of my second, what I consider a sort of serious relationship. So fast forward now some years, I'd kind of taken a break. I felt, maybe I just need some time away. So here I was working for my aunt, and one night I was out. I think it was like a Saturday night or something. Me and my friend and my pop had gone out to shoot some pool. And we're out at a pool hall. Now, this pool hall, on the other side of it, was a bar. The bar doors open, and this guy comes strolling in, points directly at me, and just says at the top of his lungs, "Where the fuck is my money?" Now, I'm 5'9". This guy was probably 6'4". My dad just looks, and he started to square up. My friend looks, and he starts squaring up. I hear the voice, and I'm like, I fucking know this voice. I turn around, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, asshole? You know I paid you. And if I didn't, I took it out of your mom's hide, and you fucking know it. Like, my dad and my friend are like, the fuck? It was one of my teachers from high school. Him and I had, he had come into Blockbuster and stuff after I graduated from high school, and we got talking, and we got to be kind of semi-friends, I guess. And then when he saw me out playing pool, he was in the bar, he was drinking, he saw me out playing pool, he decided to come over and say hi. And just from then we started hanging out, and I started going to karaoke with him, and that's where things happened. That's where I met my ex-wife. Now, I don't want to get into specifics. I don't want to get into a lot, but let me just say that was some of the toughest time in my life. I went into that relationship and thought I fell in love and thought I was being loved back by a person. I busted my ass. I put myself through massage therapy school because they said that they thought I'd be a good massage therapist, and I took on jobs that I did not want to take on, and jobs that were, I don't want to say beneath me because it sounds egotistical, but jobs that were not what I normally would have taken on, jobs that were kind of dead end and not something that I should have been in, somewhere that was not going to help me and promote a career at that point in my life where I needed it, because I was supposed to be starting a family at this point. I was dating this woman, getting ready to get married to this woman. So I needed to provide. I needed a stable job, and at her behest, at her beck and call, at her everything, I went. And I went to massage therapy school, and I graduated with a 3.96 grade point average. I busted my ass, and I other than missing 1 or 2 days of class due to, I think, either an illness of my own, an illness of hers, or someone in the family. And there were certain things that once you missed it, you couldn't make it up because it was done that day and it was body work or something like that. It wasn't something that could be made up. So other than that, I would have had a 4.0. And I probably would have been the class valedictorian. I ended up being the summa cum laude or whatever it was, the next down. I enjoyed it to an extent. I pretty much sat in the back of the class and didn't really do anything other than fuck off and then pass everything. It's not a good way to live, but for some reason that's how I work with certain things, or how I used to work with certain things. Again, more story to come. So, yeah, I thought it would be good. Then I started, I couldn't find a job in it when I graduated. I put out hundreds of resumes, and it's a very sexist business, or it was at the time. I don't know if things have changed, but it was a very sexist business back then. Pardon. It was thought that males, a lot of women didn't want to be massaged by males, or at least that's what I was told, because they were afraid the man was going to be looking at them, which a professional massage therapist absolutely will not. And a lot of men said they didn't want to be, or at least this is, again, what the places would say, a lot of men said they didn't want to be massaged by men because they were afraid that what if they felt something, then it was going to be like, oh, maybe I'm gay. So it was this whole thing. So I opted to work at Staples. Again, I took a job that I didn't want. I didn't see a chance for advancement in this job. So I took it on because I needed the money. And while I was there, and her and I were getting ready to get married and all that. By the way, she worked there during the same time frame. And at one point I got an offer to go and to work for Xfinity, Comcast at the time. It was going to be much better money. It was going to be a more stable thing. It was going to be a chance for advancement. I was going to be working on a team at a call center and things like that. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So her and I got married. And then upon getting back from our honeymoon, which, I went to training immediately. I was gone for 3 days. I came back, and then I started working, and I started busting ass for that place. And I worked my ass off, and was working 100-hour days or 100-hour weeks at one point there as well to try to increase my chance of advancement. And that's when I ended up one day going to work because I was so overworked. I drove myself into work and almost got into an accident on the way to work because the roads were icy and someone ran a red light and almost hit me. And when I got to work, because I was hyped up and everything, I went to get out of my car and I wasn't paying attention. There was a big patch of ice and I slipped and fell and broke a piece of hard cartilage off in the opposite knee of the one that I'd had the surgery on back when I was 18. So now, there I am in the parking lot, like, I was bleeding a little bit, and I could barely walk. I managed to hobble my way inside. One of the bosses is like, you ain't staying. You're going to the hospital. I'm like, how, what? And they're like, you're going to the hospital. For sure. I'm like, but I don't want to. Like, and you're calling somebody to come pick you up because either that or it's going to be an ambulance. So, again, this is like a whole thing. So there's more to this. But anyways, that's how it started. And it took about 10 months to get it diagnosed. And then I had to have surgery on it to correct it. Basically, they went in and they activated stem cells within. They drilled into the bone itself and into the marrow to activate stem cells to allow the piece of hard cartilage to regrow. And it did, but the problem was it overgrew, so I had to go back about a year later to get it shaved back down. Again, I'm busting ass. I'm working all the time. I'm back to work, and I started having some other problems. I started having stomach issues, and I ended up being out for a long time due to that, and found out I have something called Habbas syndrome, Habbas. Basically, the gallbladder, which stores bile. Mine doesn't just store it. My body produces so much bile, it doesn't just stay in my gallbladder. It's throughout my whole system, so it sometimes gives me a problem with diarrhea and other kind of gastrointestinal issues. So I've dealt with that for many years. At one point, I was going 18 to 20 times a day. I was spending upwards of 5-6 hours a day out of a 24-hour day. Out of every 24-hour day, I was spending 5 to 6 hours a day in the bathroom, on the toilet. Finally got that diagnosed and taken care of. And then after that, I ended up losing my voice for a year, which we still don't know 100% what it was, but immediately after I lost my voice and then got it back, I was struck with something called MAI, Macrobacterium avium intracellulitis. It was during this that I lost my job at Comcast. In fact, I was fired when my wife, who I had told not to, called Comcast and said that we were going to call OSHA on them because we had found out that what I had could have been caused from a bad air from working in that environment. And in fact, I found out some years later that a very close friend of mine who worked there also died, or did die from a lung issue, and I can't prove anything, but I really believe it had something to do with that. So yeah, I ended up with a lot of problems from that. I lost like half of my lung capacity from that, and I lost my job. I lost my condo, and I was forced to move back with my parents while I was still married. This led me to a very deep depression that saw me attempt suicide twice and go into respite twice based on it. The reason that happened is because during my whole marriage, I was mentally and emotionally abused. She was not physically abusive. There were other forms of abuse that I don't want to get into, but she was mentally and emotionally abusive to me in multiple ways. Regularly, she's narcissistic and belittled and demeaned me. When I was working 100 hours a week, pretty much all my paycheck went to her and her shopping addiction, going to get stuff at Walmart, cleaning supplies and things like that. I ended up selling all of my collectibles, all of my video games that I had collected over the years. I had the original Nintendo with the gamepad and the track and field game. One of, I guess, it's a pretty rare one to have. I had the original one. I had, it was all still in good condition. Everything. I had Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube. I had a Sega Saturn, a Genesis, Master System, Sega CD. I don't think I had a Dreamcast or a Jaguar, but I had a PS1. This is how long ago this was. The PS1. The Wii was just coming out. I didn't have one of those yet. But my comics, everything that I had brought with me, she made me sell. Everything that I bought when we were together, she made me sell because she needed the money. I worked and worked and worked, and she spent the money, and I got nothing to show for it other than a car that got repoed from me and the trauma and PTSD that I have, the depression and anxiety, the insecurities that I have, the feelings of worthlessness that I struggle with on a regular basis, the feelings of need, the need for you guys to see me, the need for other people to see me because I don't feel seen anymore. I feel small. She took so much from me and hurt me in so many ways. And as a man, we are not supposed to talk about these things. As a man, it seems like when we bring it up, we are thought of as lesser. But I think any partner who can do this to someone else, it doesn't matter gender. Again, it should not matter gender. It should not matter any of that. A person doing this to someone else is not right. And that's why after my second breakdown, when I put myself in the hospital and said, I'm ready and I have a plan and I'm willing to execute it, so you need to put me in the hospital now. And my parents put me in. This was after the beginning of my head injuries. So what happened was I had a lot of issues with her, and I broke up with her, but she still stalked me. After I had one of my first head injuries, I had a mental breakdown, and basically I felt like what happened was my life was a puzzle, and I just dropped it on the floor. And now I was bent over and I was putting it back together. And as the puzzle came together, I realized there was actually too many pieces. Some of them didn't fit anymore, and they needed to be gotten rid of, and they all were from her. So I knew that I needed to get her out of my life. So I started procedure of divorce, and this was in the midst of, again, all of my head injuries. And after this, she caused so much problems with the court and everything. I filed everything on my own. I did everything for free. She had to get a lawyer. She wanted me to pay for her lawyer. She wanted this. She wanted to say who could go into the court to sit in while proceedings were happening. She, typical narcissist, wanted to run everything and make it all about her. During all this was, again, I was in the middle of all of my stuff with my head injuries, so I was walking with a walker, and I was having a lot of problems mentally and things. So there I am in court dealing with her and being professional, because I've worked in the court systems. I worked for a lawyer for 4 years, from 2000 or somewhere in the. I worked for a lawyer for 4 years. So I've had so many different jobs here and there, and so many overlap jobs. So it's hard to remember everything since the head injury and order. That's why I'm trying to sit down and go through this in order, or at least as much in order as I can. I'm trying to just take the big portions for you guys. So after I did the divorce, and she tried to take custody of the cat that we had rescued, Shadow. Some people from the old channels might remember him. He was a good boy. He actually was there for me when I had all my head injuries, and he warned Mama Oz on more than one occasion. Definitely on one occasion, he went in and woke her up and got her to come in, and she found me face down on the mattress having a seizure and seizing into the mattress, unable to flip myself over. I would have suffocated myself if she hadn't come in. I was turning, I don't know if she said blue or purple, but she got me flipped over, and he basically woke her up and he saved my life. Well, the ex wanted to take the cat but her parents, she was living with her parents at the time. Her parents didn't want him. So he was here. So she wanted these stipulations put in. She wanted, like, basically visitation and all this stuff. And the judge is like, look, lady, it's a cat. I will put this stipulation in. If you get a place within 3 years, you can take the cat from him. Otherwise, it's his cat. He will take care of the cat. He will feed the cat. You will have nothing to do with anything. You don't need to pay for anything. After that, after the divorce, after all that was taken care of, she started stalking me. She started coming to the house. She started leaving food for the cat, toys for the cat, all this shit out on the porch. I asked her, don't. I said, please don't keep coming here. Please do not come to our house. Please leave me alone. You have caused me great trauma. There is so much I am dealing with. I am dealing with a lot right now with the head injuries. I am not in a healthy place, and you coming here regularly is not helping. You leaving stuff on our handicap ramp so that if I go out and go walking and don't see it, we'll trip and get hurt, or someone else can trip and get hurt because you're just leaving it somewhere and not hanging it or anything. So this is not good. You need to stop. Eventually, I did have to call the cops on her and have them go over to her house and tell her not to come back. For my own mental health and for my own safety, for my parents' mental health and for their safety, for my sister's mental health and safety, I had to call the cops on my ex-wife to tell them not to come here. I had to get looked at by some people with scorn and derision, people who I had called friends. I'm not talking about the cops in this case. I'm talking about people who I had called friends. I got to get looked at by with scorn and derision because I had to call the cops on some little girl. That's what I was told. This is the kind of stuff you have to look forward to if you come forward as a man who's been abused. I don't think anyone should have to go through this. I understand there's issues around women who get abused and what they see and the ridicule and stuff that they're given. And I don't discount any of that. And I'm not trying to say that anything that I'm going through is worse than any of that. What I'm saying is men go through a different set of things. Men don't get the same kind of consideration when they talk about abuse. When you've been hurt by the person that's supposed to be the person that you love and supposed to be the person that you're supposed to spend your life with. When you get told on a daily basis that you're not good enough, that nothing you ever do will ever be good enough. When you get told you're disgusting regularly. When you get the mental and emotional abuse and other kinds of abuse lobbed at you on a regular basis. And because of the way the society is, you don't feel safe coming forward. You don't feel like anyone would understand you. You don't feel like anyone would believe you. Because how can a little girl do those things to a man? Because that's the way society seems to look at it. that women can't abuse men. That men are the big, strong ones. We are the abusers. We are always the aggressors. Physical abuse is not the same as mental and emotional abuse and other kinds of abuse. Physical abuse is awful. All kinds of abuse are awful. There's no good kind of abuse. You shouldn't do any of it. But mental and emotional and other kinds, it's different than physical. It doesn't take strength of body. It doesn't take... Even physical abuse doesn't take strength. All it takes is a partner not willing to fight back. A partner afraid. A partner who feels so much love toward this person that they're in awe of what's going on and wondering, did I do something wrong? Is it me? Am I really not good enough? It's not easy sometimes. But no one should have to go through that. I have trauma, and a lot of it. I have things I haven't talked with anybody about. I have things that only certain people know. I have compartmentalized my life because my trust was broken so much that I don't feel like anyone should ever truly know all of who I am. Because I feel that if anybody does, they'll do what she did. They'll use it against me. They'll hurt me. They'll tear me down. Because that's what she did for years, and I allowed it to happen. And now I'm sitting here crying over it. Years later, this is 2024. All this went down 2016. Still I sit here and I screw things up all the time. I go on my podcast every few days, 3 times a week now. I have aspirations of these channels that I want to open. All this stuff I want to do. But then her voice comes up. Her voice comes up and tells me I'm not good enough. It doesn't say Ozzy. No. Because she don't know that name. It wasn't who I was when I was with her. I was somebody else. She don't know that name. That person's dead. I don't want to be that person anymore. Not after what she did to him. I can't be that person anymore. I need to be a survivor. I need to be stronger. Ozzy's stronger. Ozzy can handle himself. Ozzy gets hurt, but he bounces back. That man died when I had that last thing. When that divorce was ready, when I was ready to change things, that's when he died. I couldn't be that person anymore. I hate him. He's so weak. He got used. He got abused. How could I ever want to be like that again? Especially then. 2016, I saw it. By then, I had three head injuries by the time the divorce finally went through. 3 head injuries out of the 7 I would end up with By then I knew there's nobody who cares but me. I'm the only one who's going to take care of me. By then I knew that the only person who could fight back is me. But I was too fucked up. So many injury after injury. Kept losing my balance, falling, hitting my head. 2019, January, the last one. I fell. I hit my head on the tub in my parents' bedroom, or my parents' bathroom. I pulled down a bookcase that was used as a linen holder. It blocked the door going into the bathroom. When I hit my head, I was knocked out on the floor. It took 45 minutes for the police to get here. They had to push the door through. They had to basically reach in, pull that thing up, and get in to me. They found me on the floor. No respirations and no heartbeat. 2 minutes later, EMTs showed up. They noted no respiration, no heartbeat. They began CPR and other life-saving measures. Approximately 2 minutes to 2 minutes and 30 seconds afterward, they found respirations. I resumed respirations, and my heartbeat resumed. Paddles weren't needed, but other life-saving measures were employed. And that was my last head injury. And that was when I realized something. After everything that she did to me, I survived. After head injury, after head injury, after head injury, after head injury, 7 in total. One which killed me for at least 2 minutes. Possibly more like 4, but officially 2 for sure. Possibly who knows how long. I just know I was there. I was gone. They brought me back. And that's when I knew it. There's only one way to make things work, and that was to push. That was to force myself to get better. That was to stop relying on anyone else and worrying about just pleasing other people. Yeah, I was still going to help others and everything, but I needed to think about myself some too because I was destroyed. But I survived. So I picked myself up, and I dusted myself off, and I got myself out of that. I stopped using that walker. I started smoking CBD. I stopped taking pills when I could. I started using medical marijuana. I went out and I put myself out there. I found Lauren, and I started dating her. Her and I moved in together. I started living with her. I built myself back up to become what you see now. Do I still have trauma? Yeah. Do I need therapy? Do I need help? Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think a lot of us out there do. Am I a survivor? Better fucking believe I am. You better fucking believe I am. And I know there's others out there. I know there's more of you out there that are survivors. I know there are. And, hey, if you're going through what I'm going through, just know. It's not about what gender you are. Anyone could be abusive to anyone. It's about a power dynamic. It's about an insecurity in that person. It's about something wrong with them. It's not about you. If you're being demeaned and abused mentally, emotionally, physically, in any other way, if abuse is happening to you, it is not your fault. You are a victim. It doesn't matter what gender you are. You are the victim. This is not right. Say something. Walk away. Don't accept it anymore. Be a survivor. This is a long one. I didn't expect to be doing this tonight, but I think I needed to. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Ozzy out. Bye, guys.